Benji kind of helped spark this investigation. Can you tell me about that?
That resolution filed in King County Superior Court requires the company to pay the state $3.75 million with interest.
Bailing Out Benji
regularly looks through these records of dogs' movement from state to state.
Bailing Out Benji
played a key part in unraveling a nationwide puppy scheme.
Bailing Out Benji,
an organization that's been working across the country to stop the pipeline of puppy mill breeders.
Bailing Out Benji.
I will use my voice because it will come out, and I will keep doing it until there are no more puppy mill dogs.
Welcome, everyone, to Truth, Lies, and Puppy Mills, Bailing Out Benji's original podcast. I'm Kristen, joined today by Alexis and Jalaine. We are Mindy-less today. Mindy is on the road in Missouri, so I'm sure we will get to hear about her adventures at some point down the road. For today, it's the three of us, and we are talking about, it's Volunteer Appreciation Week as we're recording this. When the episode is released, it's actually going to be released next week. So we will be, reflecting on Volunteer Appreciation Week. But for right now, today, that's our focus. We are so thankful for the group of volunteers that we have. Literally, Bailing Out Benji would not be able to do what we do without them. So for our episode this week, I'm going to talk to Alexis first, because Alexis just got back from visiting some of our volunteers down in Missouri. So we're going to talk to Alexis about what went on down there. And then the last part of the episode, we're going to talk to Jalaine about how our volunteers organize events like this and what all goes into the volunteer side of it all. So very grateful for both of you being here today. Alexis is our research analyst, and in that role, she just got to take a little trip down to Missouri. So Alexis, talk to us. What was going on in Missouri? What'd you go down for?
So I had the honor of joining our Missouri team for Humane Lobby Day. So essentially what this event was, it was put on by and organized by a organization called Missouri Alliance for Animal Legislation. And essentially they just created this opportunity for like-minded animal welfare groups like rescues or animal control to come to the Capitol, and for the general public to come to the Capitol so that they could talk to their legislators about the animal welfare concerns they have. Our volunteers and myself were able to table at this event where we could help share the information and research that we have here at Bailing Out Benji with the general public in Missouri that came along for Humane Lobby Day.
That is really cool. Is there something going on legislatively in Missouri around puppy mills, or is our group just kind of taking advantage of the space to have the conversations?
So sadly this year, I think it was more of we're taking advantage of the opportunity to talk to people about puppy mills. To my knowledge, and from the information shared with me, there wasn't any legislation specifically targeting puppy mills in Missouri, but there were other animal welfare bills that were kind of at the forefront of people's concerns. Like there was legislation, I think it was HB 1298, which was like this cross-reporting bill where, like, say an animal control officer went into a place about like an animal welfare concern, but they saw child abuse, and then they would have to like cross-report and actually file a case about the child abuse case, even though they're like an animal control officer and usually only deal with that animal abuse or neglect situation. So I thought that was something very interesting, because that also to me said like, oh, if a police officer goes and is investigating maybe something with a human, they would also have to report any like animal abuse they saw. So that was something I think that was very interesting and very animal welfare focused, not exactly puppy mill related, but still helpful, I think, in the general realm.
Sure. And I mean, it could be puppy mill related. I mean, it could be anything that brings law enforcement to someone's property, and then they discover this operation happening there. That's fascinating. It's common sense, but it's just something that you don't really think about. So yeah, that's really cool to hear about that overlap and how that's being addressed.
And it's actually a serious case because we had a case here in Iowa that happened. Someone was doing an animal welfare check, and then they stumbled upon a puppy mill. And then it kind of evolved into a case where animals did end up being confiscated from that facility. So I guess you're right. There is kind of that ground of it could help with puppy mills.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And I think it speaks to how important it is then for that cross training for anyone who's going into the home to do those kinds of things. And I think every single episode we talk about something that we're like, oh, we should talk about that on a future episode. But I think maybe just letting people know we've given people some of the red flags to look for puppy mills, but maybe we talk at some point about animal cruelty and just kind of what are some red flags if you're in your community or things like that as well. So we can table that for another day. But so at the event then in Missouri, so you're at the state capitol, is that right?
Yep.
Okay, and so your audience is primarily legislators, or you said the general public was also invited to the event, so they can come talk to the folks at the tables as well as their legislators.
I think it was kind of a mix. Like legislators could come out and talk to people at the tables, but also the general public that was there to talk to their legislators were also coming to our tables. So I think it was a good variety of people that we got to talk to throughout the day, and other people too, like from the rescue world or from the animal control world. We got to talk to those different groups, all of us who play such an essential role in ending the puppy mill industry or interacting with it.
I love opportunities for all those people to come together. Everybody's working towards the same goal, but often we don't interact as much as we should. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and I love going to these events because our organization is very unique in the work that we do. So often people aren't equipped with the type of data that we have to offer. So it's very fun for me to go and have these conversations and to bring up the stats that we're finding by looking at USDA inspection reports, by looking at those state inspection reports or CVIs. It's things that the general public doesn't actually get access to, one, because maybe they might not know, but two, it's a lot of information to go through. So it's very fun to actually bring those stats to the Capitol, talk to the legislators, to the public, and say like, hey, this is what the data is showing. This is what like government documentation is showing. And it's another fun thing because the data is very hard to argue with. If you can back it up with these records, and that's something I kept saying at the table, is like, you can't argue with the facts. Like they're right here. Everything we do can be independently verified. So this research you can trust in because there are documents that could back it up.
Love it. I love it. So you've kind of talked about some of the things that you talked about at the table. What are some other kinds of conversations that you were having with folks? What were some of the topics that came up a lot?
So I think, once again, I think we've mentioned in other podcasts, people want to share their stories. So especially like hearing it from the rescue side or the animal control side, you hear people's stories about their interactions with puppy mills. But also we kind of hear kind of these phrases or sayings that might have been being passed around that maybe our data isn't supporting. So this part might be a little controversial, but Missouri is quite often known as the puppy mill capital in our country. And so having these numbers come into the conversation, it was my time to kind of tell people, well, when we're looking at USDA inspection reports, something we do every month, and then we create a quarterly report off of these violations. I was there to tell people that, hey, actually, Missouri's kind of performing better than some other Midwest states. And I say that because when we look at all of the USDA inspections across the country, and especially at like our Midwest states that are very well known for getting USDA violations and well known for having puppy mills who get those violations, only about 3% of Missouri USDA licensees that were inspected in 2024 got violations. And if I break that number down for you, really, there were about 621 USDA licensees, but cat and dog breeding and dealing facilities we're talking about, that were inspected in 2024, and only 19 of those people got violations. and only 7 of them got direct violations, which are those more severe violations, and none got critical. And so when you say that only 3% of these licensees got violations, what does that mean? Well, we can compare it to other Midwest states and say like, oh, Wisconsin, of the breeders that they had inspected by the USDA, 39% got violations. So when you compare it, you're like, oh, they may have different numbers of licensees. Like Missouri by far has the most licensees. And we kind of think that's maybe why it's known as the puppy mill capital, is because they have so many facilities. But when we look at the data, at least at the federal level, we're still working on state data. It's a little different, but they are performing a bit better than other Midwest states. And we kind of had these conversations about, well, why is that happening? Well, it's because Missouri has some like state laws that are better than at least other Midwest states, like Wisconsin or Iowa, where we have a USDA loophole that lets our breeders keep performing to a substandard level that the USDA sets, whereas like states that have state laws in place that bolster that USDA standard are seeing a bit better performance. So that was an interesting conversation, maybe a little controversial to bring to Missouri, who has had this reputation for a very long time. But if we're really looking at least the federal data, they seem to be performing better than other Midwest states that may be more problematic. And that's not to say that Missouri doesn't still have problems, like there are still issues, but the data might be telling a different story than what we've been hearing, because when we look at everything, the whole picture, the stats tell a different story.
We don't say that to, like brag about the breeders or to say like, oh, Missouri, you're good, we're moving on. Like that's not the intention. But to your point, when our job is data, and when the data is telling a certain story, it's our responsibility to report it, whether it's in line with what we thought to be right or not. We have to report what the data says. And it seems to be shifting, and I think that's good news. How was that received there at the Capitol to the folks you were speaking with, to hear you say, well, actually, here's what our data has been showing?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a surprise, because I mean, Missouri is in the news a lot. I mean, they're in the news recently too. Like the Horrible 100 list just came out, and Missouri has a lot of breeders in there, and they have more breeders than other Midwest states. And so this is kind of the narrative that has been being pushed in media, in articles, that Missouri is worse than other states. So I think it was kind of a shock to people, because they're like, well, this is what I've been hearing. But the problem is no one's really sat down and collected all this data until us recently. So we are pushing out these new numbers that are new conversation points that people might be a little hesitant to hear, because there's been one narrative for so long. But once again, this can be independently verified. And for the fact it is actually independently verified by another organization who works on USDA inspections. They look at the USDA inspection reports, and they also pull data on what's happening in inspection reports. And they've also seen that for the past couple of years, 2024, Missouri breeders, only 3% got USDA violations. And then in the past 2 years, in 2023 and 2022, only 5% of USDA licensees were getting licenses violations. So if we look at that, and we know that like, oh, the USDA has risk-based inspections, so everyone's kind of getting inspected within like 1, 2 to 3 year period, that's not a lot of breeders getting violations, but that's what the data is showing. And nobody has been able to like put this out in the media yet, because it's just not exactly been researched or at least published publicly. So definitely, sorry, long-winded reply. People were like, oh, really? That's very interesting. So I know there's a little bit of hesitancy, even from some of our volunteers there. I'm going to have calls with them, because there's this continued conversation about like, this is not what we've heard before. Can you explain this a bit more? So once again, bringing that data forth, I think we're going to have some like conversations in the future of like, okay, but what is the data showing?
And what do we do with the information that we get from the data? How do we reconcile it? And I know for sure we are going to have an episode coming up talking about what is a puppy mill. And we all define puppy mills a little bit differently. And when you say there's the most number of breeders in Missouri, I know a lot of folks would say that breeder equals puppy mill, right? Like those are the two. So they have the most breeders. That means they have the most puppy mills. So I think that's my guess would be part of that discrepancy too between, is Missouri the worst in the country, or do they just have the most breeders? But to your point, not the most violations.
Yeah,
So,
no, that I think that leads to another conversation of, Missouri is known to have the most like licensees, but like what's being left out of the conversation, and what was fun to also bring up to attendees at this event was like there's a whole online world which tells a different story. Like there are so many breeders advertising in states like California, Florida, and Texas, states that don't have a lot of licensees, but like when you compare them to Missouri, they have a lot of breeders. So that's kind of escaping the conversation too. And what we're trying to bring up to people is like there's a whole online market and a whole unlicensed and unregulated world. So like whereas in Missouri, like at least these people, a lot of them have eyes on them. I mean, there's a lot that fly under the radar too, I'm sure, but at least there's eyes on them. Whereas in like California, Florida, and Texas, there are a lot of unregulated breeders and brokers, and that might tell a different story as well. So that was another conversation we kind of had, the online world versus the licensed, regulated, I'm selling to pet stores, but maybe also online world.
we're like neck deep into our online research project, which, correct me if I'm wrong, was a 30-day project, which is now going into its second month. Or well into its second month, because there's just so much. It's just unreal. So I'm really excited to be able to report out some of the things that we're uncovering from that online project. That's a big one.
It'll be, it was 30 days, but definitely going to be longer. But we are working on Missouri currently, so we should have some fun stats coming out in a few weeks on that.
I love it. So a little bit more about the lobby day in Missouri then. When we do events like that, so where we are at the Capitol talking to legislators, talking to the folks who are there in person, what's our goal for a day like that? What's our purpose in being there, and how do you think it went in Missouri based on that goal?
Yeah, that's a great question. So preface this all, we are a 501c3, so like we can't personally lobby as an organization, but that doesn't mean that like we don't have a presence, that our data can't be used, or that like myself as an individual or our volunteers as individuals could go and talk to their legislators about legislation or to use our resources. So we can't lobby as a group, but we can as individuals go and talk. So that's the great part about Humane Lobby Day, is that we're still individuals when we're talking to our legislators, and we can talk about these issues, but also we have that research presence. We're there to be a resource to the public and to our volunteers. So I think that's a major way, a major thing about being at Humane Lobby Day, is that we are that resource for people and having these conversations, sparking community conversations. I think that's something that our organization is very proud of, is that our volunteers do get out into their communities and they're trying to share the resources that they have and spark these conversations, because they really help in ending puppy mills. So I think that was the main goal of Humane Lobby Day, is just to have good conversations about things that we know, learn things from the public, learn things from our volunteers who are working in their community and have the best knowledge about what's happening in their communities. And then to the question of like, how do I think it went? I think it went great. I love being out there talking to people. It's probably one of my favorite things to do, besides being behind the screen and doing the research. I think that I had great conversations. I feel that our volunteers had great conversations from the feedback they gave, and that we learned a lot from each other in these conversations. So I think it had a good day. We had a lot of good support from people that were like, hey, thanks for being the voice of the voiceless. Thanks for being here. Thank you for sharing this information. And I think we met some new people that might have some lasting connections. So overall, I think that makes a very great day.
Fantastic. Had you met our Missouri volunteers that you were with before you went down, or was this a first meeting?
So, I've met some virtually, but this was the first time meeting in person. A few of them helped me with research, so we have that like virtual connection, Zoom calls. But this was the first time that I met them in person, and that was great. I think that's one of the main things I think we're trying to really do as a grassroots our organization is to go out and meet our volunteers where they're at. So a 4.5 hour drive to Missouri was nothing to be able to just meet them in person, build up that connection. And yeah, it was great to actually meet them in person because that's way different than being on a screen.
I agree. I love that. And you got some good podcast listening time in on the road, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Well, thank you for going down there. I love that this is something that we can do, that we can get out and support our teams and just be boots on the ground in some of the communities in which our volunteers are working. So always a great opportunity. Anything else you want to share about your trip to the capital of Missouri?
It is important to go and have conversations with your legislators because, state legislation is going to move a lot faster than federal legislation. So it is very important to have a presence at your own state capital and to have your voice heard, especially if you're speaking for the voiceless. So just encouragement to give it a shot and to reach out if you need any help or resources if you feel like you don't know what to say to legislators. We've got some facts for you depending on what state you're in. So yeah, just that.
Great. Yeah, Alexis is always happy to share information and knowledge. And it is important to be involved at the local level and not just rely on the federal level, because like you pointed out in Iowa, we've got this wonderful loophole that that gets in the way of that federal legislation. So do not dismiss your local government as well. Thank you so much, Alexis. I really appreciate you sharing all of that wonderful information. It's always amazing to hear you talk about research and just to feel your passion for that. So thank you for sharing that with us and with the folks in Missouri. I want to pivot over to Jalaine now. As our volunteer coordinator, Jalaine has the behind the scenes perspective on an event like the one that Alexis just went to. So Jalaine, can you talk to us about how when one of our volunteer teams wants to do an event like this, what does that look like? What's the process? How do they get into the event?
They let me know that they're interested in doing an event. So not just like lobby day, any event that you see us at is because a volunteer came to me and said, hey, this sounds really cool. This sounds like a great opportunity to go out and talk about what we do. And so then I help them go through the steps. We take care of any application fees, any event fees, provide all the materials they'll need, and just kind of help set them up for success in the best way possible.
That's one of those where when I say like we couldn't do the work we do without these volunteers, like they are in their communities. They know the events that are happening in their community. They know where to reach folks that are buying puppies to talk to them. They know where to reach the legislators. They know where to plug in their community in places that matter. So, for us sitting in central Iowa and then trying to figure out down in Missouri where we need to be, we do rely on those volunteers to do that kind of stuff. So, so we have these volunteers all over the country. They decide, our Missouri team decides they want to go to Lobby Day. So they contact you and they say, hey, Jalaine, we want to go to Lobby Day. And you're like, yes, let's go. So what you said, we provide them with all of the things that they need. What are some examples of some of the stuff that we would send down specific to this Missouri event?
So specific to Lobby Day, we got a little more technical than we would for your everyday event. Alexis compiled so much of her research, had it spiral bound. We love it. We love Alexis's binders. We love when she does this. And she brought all that stuff down with her. But we also have, um, back to Alexis, she makes these graphs that are really pretty easy to understand visual of the year's violations, any information that you need to know. We provide our flyers, our brochures. Alexis also comes up with FAQ sheets, talking point sheets. Any question that you might have, you can send it to us beforehand and we will make sure that you're good to go.
Okay, yeah. So if there's something they can anticipate that like, hey, there's a lot of chatter about this right now. I'm guessing some folks are going to want to know about it. So then our volunteers can feel more prepared. I love that. So I get the impression from where I'm sitting, as I'm trying to learn all of this, that so our volunteer teams have there's kind of three levels of stuff. So there's stuff that they just always have with them, right? So like we have sent them tablecloths, we've sent them banners, we've sent them just general Bailing Out Benji info, bracelets and bandanas and fun things like that. So that's just kind of stuff they have on hand. They're going to take to whatever event they do. And then there is more like, okay, what's the current information? Is there anything I might need that applies to just right now? And then there's kind of that third level of like, Alexis is going to the Capitol, which probably not every group is going to get that level of detail. But certainly I would imagine Alexis is not our only Alexis in our volunteer team. And I'm sure we have some volunteers out there that are into those deep dives as well. So basically when they're planning an event, they just let you know, here's the type of event, here's some of the stuff I would like. And we get them the most up-to-date information that we have. And you work with Alexis to gather that kind of stuff and get it out to them.
Absolutely. Yep.
Well-oiled machine. I love that. So let's see, what else do we need to talk about? What else about events, Jalaine? So not just lobby day kind of events, but just other events, that behind the scenes work that our volunteers do to make these events happen.
Well, okay, first, because I'm going to forget if I go any further, our volunteers have done 60, as of this recording, 60 events this year. We've only
We're
had
in the
4
third week
months.
of April.
Right. There's only been 4 months this year. And they're the cold months here in the Midwest, at least. 60 events? That's wild. I love it.
Yeah. And again, we couldn't do that. We're 4 people in the Midwest. We could not have done 60 events across the country by the end of April. So yeah.
No.
I feel like sometimes when I say we would be lost without our volunteers, I sound like I'm just flattering, but like it's legit. We need those volunteers. Yeah, love it. And we're going to talk more about different types of events. So this time we're really focusing on this lobbying event, not lobbying event. We're focusing on the event at the Capitol, the lobby day event. And in the future, we'll talk about some of other types of events that our volunteers do, because it's really, sky's the limit, whatever they come up with to do. If it fits with our mission and they have the time to do it, we support it. All good things that we do. And then after the event, do they report back to us about how things went, or what kind of follow-up is there after an event?
Yeah, we have a really nifty event submission form. So after an event, all they have to do is go to click on a link, and they fill out the event information, their information, and then they do a little breakdown of the event. So they let us know approximately like a real rough estimate. We don't make them count every single person that they talked to, but they give us a rough estimate of people they talked to. Or people that honked when they drive by at protests. I know we have honk counters too. And then there's a breakdown of inventory sold, any type of donations, how that comes in, cash, Square, Venmo. It gets real technical in that form. But it's stuff we have to know. And like you said, our volunteers are all over the place and we are here. So there's a lot of trust there, and I do wholeheartedly trust all of our volunteers, and I think that's I don't know. I think that speaks volumes about the organization and our volunteers, that they're just that passionate and dedicated and amazing people.
I would imagine too that some of these events might kick off some conversations between us and the volunteers about things that they heard or things that they experienced at the event. And I'm sure some of that comes out in those volunteer meetings as well, that people would share. And so I think that's a really good way for us to keep in touch with what's happening around the country as well, what conversations are important, that kind of thing, just to get a feel for what people are hearing out there.
You can schedule specific Zoom calls. Like I'll be having a Zoom call with our Missouri team this week, just as like a follow-up after Humane Lobby Day. So Zoom makes it very easy to stay connected too.
Mm-hmm. Our Utah, Michigan teams, they have regular volunteer meetings to stay up to date, and it's really nice to sit in on those and get more detail. I mean, I really think that we learn from listening to each other speak. Like, I don't know, that's how we share our knowledge. And I've learned so much from being in this office space with Mindy and Alexis and Kristen. I've learned so much from being out with our teams the few times I've gone. I don't know, there's so much to learn.
So you mentioned teams having meetings. So we have the national volunteer group meeting once a month, but then states have their own volunteer teams, which duh. And so some of those state teams have their own meetings as well. So they can talk about what's happening in their state and then bring that back to the monthly meeting. Really cool. That's really, I mean, we have some states that are pretty ginormous. So I can imagine some of these states being a volunteer, it does get tricky because your state volunteer leader might be quite a ways away from you. And so that's a good way to keep those teams communicating as well.
Yeah, we also, this isn't like a training or anything, but on the theme of connection, we've started having volunteer Zoom calls on the last Wednesday of the month where they aren't even like a formal training. It's literally just a conversation. We're here, let's build that community. Let's talk about what's going on and see where it goes. And I think that's really helpful too. And I don't know, I'm a big fan of building community, and especially with our volunteers.
For sure. And that's just a time with no agenda, just open communication. So I hope our volunteers will continue to take advantage of that and just check in with each other. I think, someone in Texas hearing what's happening in Colorado, talking to some folks in Wisconsin, I think it only makes us stronger to share some of those different ideas. So that's a really cool thing we've started up. Well, thank you both so much for being here today and for helping me understand more about the process, and our listeners and viewers understand more as well. It truly takes a village, and we have got such a strong village. So in honor of Volunteer Appreciation Week, huge shout out to all of our volunteers who are just bar none working their tails off to help spread the message of the research that we're doing and the mission of Bailing Out Benji. We're so thankful for each and every one of them, and I know they watch and listen. So hey, all out there, thank you so much. We appreciate you. I'm going to give a shout out real quick before we're done, because I can't let an episode go by without talking about fundraising. So we will put a link in the show notes to our donate page where you can sign up. If you sign up to be a recurring donor, we will send you a free t-shirt. We just had another one today. I sent an email. So when I'm in the office tomorrow, I have to pull a shirt and get it out to them. So sign up to be a recurring donor. I will see that. I will reach out to you. You will get a free shirt. You can also do a one-time donation if that's what you're able to do. That is fine with us. So those are my fundraising appeals for this week. Thank you all for joining us, and we will be back with you next week. Bye.